When you're deciding where to live in Hawaii, one of the big factors that you really want to take into account is how much rainfall do you like because of the way the islands are situated in the Pacific and the normal weather patterns of the Pacific Ocean. The rainfall on the islands, depending on what side of the island you're on and what elevation you're at, can vary dramatically. And so we're going to go through today and look at the different islands and give you an idea of the level of rainfall and show you how much it varies depending on where you are on the island. So we're going at Hawaii Island and we'll move up the island chain. But if you look here on the Big Island, the normal weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean is the weather comes from the east to the west. The rain and the clouds will come on the east sides and a lot of times hit the east side of the island. And on the Big Island in particular, there's a large mountain right here called Mauna Loa, and it traps a lot of that weather on the east side of the island, and that rain primarily falls on the east side and then doesn't make it to the west side of the island. And so if you look at on the east side of the island, it gets up to 300 inches of rainfall over here in the Hilo area. That is higher at the higher elevations and lower at the lower elevations, but significantly wetter. And if you look up here in Kohala, it's 160 inches of rain. But on the west side, the wettest part of the west side of the island is 50 inches. So like 1/6 the amount of rainfall that you get on the east side. And so very, very different depending on which side of the island you're on. And if you're on the Hilo side, you're gonna get a lot of rain. It's very lush and it can be very dry in these areas up here near Waikoloa and Kohala on the leeward side or west side of the island. So very, very different. Jumping over to Maui, there we go, there's Maui. Same type of situation. So on the east side of the island, you can see here up to 400 inches of rain at the higher elevations near Haleakala. And these bands get lighter and lighter and lighter, and kind of in the saddle of Maui, 15 inches, 35 inches, so much lower rainfall in the saddle on the opposite side of Haleakala, because the same thing happens here is the weather comes from the east and hits this side of the island, and a lot of the rain will get trapped and fall there. And it is wet also in kind of northwest Maui, and you look, it's 50 inches near the coastline, but it gets all the way up to 260, 360 inches of rain at the higher elevation. So much wetter, again, at higher elevations and on the east side on Maui. If you're looking to relocate here on the Big Island, I want to share with you a resource that we put together. Over 80 agents from my team, expert agents here on the Big Island, put together a relocation guide that will help you evaluate all of the important factors that you want to take into account before you move here to the Big Island. School districts, healthcare, employment, all of the things that you got to think about, we put into one home buyer's guide that will help you figure out what is best when you start this relocation process here to the Big Island. So if you want this guide, just click on the link below, fill out the form. We will send you the guide for free. And if you want to take the next steps and have a conversation with us, we'd be happy to help. Getting over to Oahu, same situation on Oahu. You have a mountain range that runs along the island this way, and so on the east side you have much higher levels of rain. You have up to kind of the highest like 250 inches, but in all of these areas look at 100 inches, 80 inches, but definitely wetter on the north and east sides of the island as opposed to the west sides, where if you look at Makaha, Waianae, Nanakuli, those areas, you're talking about 25 inches, 35 inches of rain, much drier over here on the west side of the island, and even down into Honolulu, 25 inches. If you get a little bit higher, like up in Manoa and Liliha, those types of areas, you're looking at 30, 40 inches of rain, but definitely way wetter on the east side, where you're talking about 100 plus inches of rain all along the coast in these areas. And then over to Kauai, some of the wettest areas in the world are on Kauai, but again, it really depends on elevation. If you're near the coastline, almost all the way around the island, it's 50 inches on the east side, 25 inches of rain on the west side. But as you get into the higher elevations and the northern part of the island, 160, 180, all the way up to 380 inches of rain a year. So much, much wetter on the east side and the higher elevation. So you really want to think about when you're choosing a location to live, you have real vast diversity in terms of the amount of rainfall that you get. And it's something that you definitely want to consider in terms of your lifestyle and where you're coming from. I know people that come from places like Seattle really prefer a drier climate because they have lived through years and years and years of rain, versus someone who's maybe coming from Arizona who really wants that wetter climate and the ability to grow things, and they lived in a dry desert climate for a long time and they're looking for something different. So big factor when you're considering where to live and where to choose to live on all of the islands. So take your time, spend some time. I always recommend maybe renting an Airbnb for a week in a couple of different places to really get a feel for what the weather looks like long term, because sometimes you can get a really beautiful day, the one day of the week that's really beautiful and sunny, and then the rest of the week it rains. And if you just visit for that one day, you don't get a real clear picture on exactly what the overall weather looks like. So if you have any questions about this or anything else, you can always email me at dylan@buybigisland.com, where there is always a link in the description below to a calendar that you can book a meeting with me directly, and we'll talk about your plans, real estate or other related. Anything you want to talk about, you can book a meeting and we'll do that. Always appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys next week.